In the 21st century, it remains hard to find a decent game of Tetris. This is not the product under review here. This is one of a million ways in which you can emulate classic versions of the game Tetris, each of which is flawed in its own way. This will cost you less than $20. It is tiny compared to a behemoth like the Evercade EXP here. It's tiny compared to the joystick it's sitting on top of. And if you really understand the limits you're working within, I'd say it's an excellent way to play a certain kind of Tetris. What do I mean? There's a difference between a game and a training module for a game. This is a way for you to practice playing Tetris as opposed to actually playing the game of Tetris. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a difference between, learning how to be a pitcher in baseball, practicing the motions again and again, and actually competing in a game. Now, they've made some mistakes. If you look at the center of the playfield here, look at the gaps between the columns of pieces. Doesn't it seem peculiar to you that the black lines are not of equal width, that the bricks are not equally spaced across the playfield? That's an error. That's a mistake. The screen itself, as is consistently the case with my arcade, washes out inexplicably and strangely when seen from this angle, but actually it's clearer and easier to see from this angle, as a very, very strange quality when seen straight on. So that's consistent. If you were to play any game that involved scrolling imagery, you would have terrible screen tearing, terrible shimmering, terrible flickering of the image. But that's not a problem with the game of Tetris. Not at all. Now, I got to tell you something. If you compare this to the alternatives, it's a great way to play one-player-only classic Tetris. This is the 8-bit version with only 2 buttons, no hold feature. You will also notice that I'm playing it in silence. You also will play this in silence. And when the volume is set to 0, there is no hissing noise, there is no background noise. However, if you are so foolish as to try to play it with the music off and the sound effects on, some of them might interest some of you in this audience, you will be disappointed to find that there is indeed a hissing noise once the volume is over a certain level. I'll demonstrate that now. You can hear that hissing in the background already. It's terrible. In the same way that this is evidently running far too much electricity through the speaker and thus has that awful hissing noise, the screen is too bright for its own good. There should be a way to decrease the brightness. I haven't tried playing this outdoors with the sun shining down. But it's not just that the screen is too bright for my taste subjectively when indoors. It is instead the case that it's too bright for the system itself to handle. Like the image itself would be of better quality if you could decrease the brightness. This is the sort of thing that doesn't come across on YouTube so well, but you could have blacker blacks, a nicer contrast between blacks and whites. Now, I will mention, you do get a nice animation when you get a single, double, triple, or Tetris. The movement of the pieces is excellent, and the, how should I say this? The sense of satisfaction you get from having things clear and collapse is excellent. Much, much, much better than this version of the game on Game Boy, for example. It is overall, in terms of gameplay, an excellent version of the game. However, there's a little bit of a conflict of interest here, because my arcade wanted to put out 2 different versions, this 8-bit version and then a 16-bit version with 3 buttons. So you do not get the option of playing so-called modern Tetris, modern as opposed to classical, with a hold button. And you do not get the option, for example, of having different colors remain on screen after the pieces land. So you see that's blue, that's orange, light blue, and then green. They are colored while they are falling from the sky, but then the moment they land, they turn into a uniform gray. That doesn't bother me, but it does seem to me they kind of had a strategy of exaggerating these sorts of simple differences between the 8-bit and 16-bit versions of the game so that they could justify your separate purchase of the 8-bit and 16-bit version. With this, you have a kind of training module for just playing the one-player version of the game. There are many, many other versions of Tetris, of course, that you don't have here. One-player classic Tetris, no distractions. And certainly, for example, I'll show you the final level so you see the speed on that. You do not even have a voice, for example. You don't get a voice or a sound effect or a jingle to celebrate when you get a Tetris. It's nicely animated, but it's silent. So there you go. Obviously, I'm not trying to impress you guys with my Tetris skills here. This gives you a sense of the speed and falling on the final stage. This directional pad, it's perfectly good for Tetris. You would not want to play Samurai Showdown with it. You would not want to play Marble Madness with it or Super Monkey Ball with it. But guys, the quality of the D-pad is great for its limited purpose here. The quality of the buttons is great for its limited purpose. And the price for this piece of plastic is suitable. This certainly costs less than just one cartridge for the enormous Evercade here. I thought I'd be able to compare them in size, but the difference in size is, in a word, incomparable. Why did I buy this? Fundamentally, because every other version of the game I have access to, I'm a very harsh critic of. Yeah, I've... How much detail should I go into here? If you just want a decent version of Tetris, you could pull out under some strange circumstance, when you're in a hospital bed, when you're waiting in the back of an ambulance or what have you, I can say, this is it. And by contrast, if you want to get set up with an emulator on your mobile phone so that you can play the Bandai WonderSwan version, decent version of the game, do you want to get set up with an emulator or with, original hardware to play the Nintendo DS version? It's called Tetris DS. That's the good version of the game in 2-player mode, but not 1-player. Do you want to play the 3DS version, Tetris Axis? Each one of these has its own problems and its own drawbacks. So believe it or not, I do genuinely think, just based on the strength of the software, just based on how well programmed, how well this version of the game plays, there's a legitimate argument for you spending $15 US on this product, and that is in reality the kind of price point you'll be looking at.